Right, so I have continued to knit the next round, and I've got back to the point where I'm about to knit the second needle. So I'll get up to the edge of that cast off area. So that's work 5 stitches in pattern, and instead of casting on the 8 stitches immediately, I will turn around my work and knit back. Oh, juggling all these needles is quite something, but in fact it's quite difficult. What I'm going to have to do, because I haven't got a fifth needle to use, although I probably can find one from Sarah's needles here. Yeah, there's a number 9. I'll just use one of Sarah's number 9s, a straight needle, to go backwards, because it's juggling 4 needles. It's quite hard. So I'm going to go backwards. So just sticking to the pattern, you can see what stitch you're supposed to knit, whether it's a purl or a knit stitch. If you're a knitter, you'll know exactly what I mean. So purl 2, knit 2, and purl 1. Oops, there goes a needle. I think this is going to be tricky. However, with enough persistence, you can do almost anything in the world, you know. Right, I picked up that needle that fell off, which was the one that, and quickly pick up those stitches before they run. It's not the end of the world if they do run. You can easily pick up stitches that have been dropped, as you know, if you're a knitter. The wool is kind of splitty, so I'm not going to be able to pick them up perfectly, but once I get to knitting them, I'll ensure that that works. So what I'll do is put those 5 stitches that I've knitted onto that spare needle back onto one of my double pointed needles, and and continue. I've never done this before, so it's trial and error, really. It's a bit of an experiment, but I'm sure it's going to work. So I'll just keep knitting backwards. Knitting backwards, as an old friend would say, doing her work backwards. What was her name? Mrs. Mackintosh. Was it Mackintosh? She was quite a card. She always criticised Diane, apparently, she said she worked backwards. Yeah, she was a very capable English woman who used to be in service when she was a kid. Oh boy, I do keep dropping this needle. I'll just get another one. I guess it's old age, slight arthritis, and also being left-handed, always been quite clumsy. So starting something new and doing it backwards is not as easy as it looks. Now, got a bit of a frog in my throat. It's not COVID, don't worry. It's just a bit of a frog in the throat. And so we go backwards on the first, going backwards on the first needle. And what am I doing? Yes, that's right. So I've left the second needle stitches on 2 needles. I'll soon be back to that cast off gap again. So that's got me back to the first needle, and now I've got to knit back from the third needle at the end of the row, at the end of the former row, going backwards towards the cast off thumb hole. It makes a lot of noise, all these needles clashing against each other like little sword fights. I don't know if you can hear that, but it won't be long now. Let's hope this isn't too long a video for you guys. Let's see now. I don't know what I'm going to do these videos. I've never made a playlist, but I suppose what I could do is put these ones about the mittens into a playlist. It's all an experiment right now. I'm back to that second needle where I had dropped the stitches. And now the first 5 stitches, because they're the ones I picked up, are going to be a little bit tricky because they weren't picked up perfectly, so I'll have to just make very sure when I work them that I've got the whole stitch and not just a divided stitch like the first one. I can see is a bit divided, but it's not difficult to make sure you get the whole thing. So one stitch at a time, I'll be knitting across these 5 until I get to that gap, that thumb gap. So that's the first stitch picked up. Second stitch is a purl stitch. It was picked up all right, but it needed to be twisted round to the proper way. It was facing backwards. The same with the third stitch, transferring it from one needle to another so that I can knit it in the right way. That one was also divided. It doesn't look quite right, so I'm just going to go back and make sure that it's okay. It looks all right. It is quite thin, silky acrylic wool. That's why the needles keep falling off. It's not fluffy wool. And finally, I'm back to the hole. You see, there we go. It is quite a big hole. So now I'm going to cast on 8 stitches and go across. So I'm just using my thumb, passing the wool around my thumb and making a loop. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the last one, 8 stitches. And then having cast on all 8 stitches, I just finished that row, making the 18 stitches that we had originally on that row. And it starts off with 2 purl stitches, and then 2 knit stitches and a purl stitch. So now I am in fact going to proceed I will be traveling backwards. So the first will be last and the last will be first and the middle will stay in the middle. Isn't that fascinating? It feels odd, but once I get going it'll be just the same as if I had started in that direction. So I'm actually transferring the needles because I've got Sarah's single pointed needle on. I have to get that off because I can't knit in the round through that knob. So I'm just transferring the stitches from her needle back onto one of my now free double pointed needles, and I'll be able to continue. round and round we go. Okay, so now having made the hole for the thumb, I'm going to be knitting down from the thumb, where the thumb joins the hand, probably about another 2.5 to until I get to the wrist area, when I will change from knitting double rib, knit 2, purl 2, to just stockinette stitch for 6 rows, so that it kind of makes a demarcation between the hand and the wrist. So that's when I'll see you again. At the moment, let's see, there is the thumb hole. Looks quite big now, because I have got that extra row. Between where I cast off and cast on. So I think it does fit, the thumb fits through. Okay,